Hello, Bill.
Good morning, Matt.
Welcome to the DMZ, everybody. I'm not sure I'm allowed to be taping or be doing this. There's a hearing taking place, Bill, and I think that I've been chained to the TV watching hours and hours and hours of testimony and then debates.
Have I ruined your Cal Ripken streak? You've done it wire to wire, and now you screwed it up?
Not just a consecutive game streak, but a consecutive inning streak that is now coming to an end thanks to you. But, I mean, come on, people. Like, I can't just watch hearings. I have to eventually talk about them.
Well, I was away last week. I was on a little vacay. So I felt like I absorbed the hearings like a typical American, which is I didn't watch it at all. And I got the occasional ping on my phone, and I caught a headline in the morning. And it just, so when I would hear this, the punditry, like, where's the pizzazz? I'm like, most of us aren't even watching this thing, so I don't know what you're worried about the theatrics for.
I love how you've cast yourself now as a hero who was more connected to Joe's six pack by virtue of not doing your job.
That's right.
That's great. Bill, you picked. Let me just say, I feel like the people who tune into this show, they expect us to show up every week. I hate to invoke Cal Ripken yet again, but are you familiar with a guy named I think his name was Wally Pipp?
Yeah, he's who Lou Gehrig replaced.
That's right, and Wally Pipp one day decided not to come to work. Yeah. He wasn't feeling 100%, so he took the day off, and Lou Gehrig replaced him in the outfield and never took another day off.
In the outfield? It wasn't.
Was it first base?
It was first base.
First base. And my point is, I don't want you to be the Wally Pipp of the DMZ. Don't let it happen again.
Somehow I made it back. But as someone who has watched pretty much the whole thing,
yeah.
Now you're not an objective observer. You've already cast your lot in for impeachment. You're a traitor to the cause. You're off the Trump train. But you've also been not thrilled with Adam Schiff beforehand. How do you feel now about how this is playing out? Do you feel the Democrats are handling this well, or Republicans making you question your commitment to impeachment?
No, I think that the Democrats have done better than I thought. The hearings, if you're rooting for impeachment, if you think that impeachment is appropriate, then Democrats, I think, they exceeded my expectations. I did not know if they could conduct an effective hearing because, heretofore we saw the Mueller testimony was a disaster, the Cora Lewandowski testimony, and both of these were, in a sense, hostile witnesses. Mm-hmm. And I thought maybe that would be repeated. But for whatever reason, I think the witnesses have been very damning. Their testimony has been very damning of Donald Trump. I do think Democrats, I'm used to rooting for Republicans, so sometimes I do think Democrats have made a couple of mistakes, one of which you and I were just tweeting about, yeah. And that is failing to remind people that the real story was revealed in that phone call. Yeah. Donald Trump we already know that he was, extorting Ukraine, and these are supporting witnesses. But the Democrats should remind people of the main story is what we already know. They haven't done a good job of that. The other thing I think Democrats and the witnesses have not done a good enough job of doing is putting into context the timeline, right? So Jim Jordan will get up there and start asking, Sondland, for example, what did Donald Trump tell you? And Sondland says, Trump told me no quid pro. He doesn't want a quid pro quo. He doesn't want anything, What they're not saying is, Trump told him that after the, IG delivered, the whistleblower's report to the Intel Committee. And so almost all of the so-called exculpatory evidence that would exonerate Trump that Republicans are citing are things that happened after the jig was up. after Trump realized that they were on to him, and I don't think Democrats or the witnesses, and I really blame Democrats more, are doing a good enough job of reminding people that exculpatory evidence really shouldn't be counted for much.
I mean, I've only been able to really catch stuff, I guess, on Tuesday and Wednesday, and it's still kind of here and there. And I don't get to watch the whole thing through, but I did catch yesterday with Sunland, one of the Republicans berating him for saying it was his presumption. Trump didn't tell him directly to do this, that he was sort of connecting the dots himself.
Yeah.
And just my reaction was, who cares if Sondland had a presumption? There's the transcript of the call already. I already know what Trump said to Zelensky. Sondland just helped me fill in some of the blanks or what led up to that call or the aftermath of that call. Who cares?
Well, the
what
thing
Sondland's
is, everybody involved in this, whether they're a Purple Heart recipient, expert on Ukraine, whether they're, a refugee from or children of a refugee from the Soviet Union and Nazi Germany, who's a corruption expert, or whether they're a Donald Trump appointee who gave $1 million to Trump's inaugural, they all had this assumption somehow that there was a quid pro quo. If Ukraine was going to get the money, that they would have to deliver the goods. Somehow they all got that message. And again, though, I think that is a huge part of the story, but it shouldn't be perceived as the only part because, again, we have the call.
Right. I mean, their presumptions were, everything in the call squares with their presumptions.
Yeah. But again, I think it's just the timeline to me is so important because Republicans will say, look, Ukraine got the aid, which is true. They got it after it became clear that the whistleblower report was delivered.
Right.
They'll say, and Zelensky never delivered. He obviously didn't feel pressured because he didn't announce an investigation. But we know he was going to announce the investigation.
Who cares what his reaction is? The question is what Trump asked him to do.
Right. But even if you do care, he was prepared to announce an investigation into the Bidens.
Yes.
And he canceled it 2 days before because the aid flowed. Uh-huh. I just think that the timeline part is very important because the only thing Republicans have is this so-called exculpatory evidence that they're going to use, and that's what's going to be shown on Fox News.
Well, and again, I don't want to say, I don't think I can say, Democrats have done a bad job, and if they did a better job, the needle would have moved. I don't even know if the needle has moved yet. I don't know what the public opinion reaction to all this is yet. I mean, in the last poll I saw was a few days ago. I think it was ABC Washington Post that said 51% was for impeachment and removal, 58% were for impeachment but not necessarily removal. Which is, not bad. Not bad for impeachment polling.
No, I'm picking nits here. I don't want to beat up on the Democrats. I think the Democrats have actually done a pretty good job and exceeded my expectations. I'm nitpicking with this, but I still think they should take it.
But I think there's also a question here because 51% is not wildly different than some of the numbers we had before the hearing started. And it reflects the evenly divided country that we have been all this time. There was a presumption going in on the left that once you got these hearings on TV, that's when the dam would break. Everyone would see, this would all come to life in a way that it hadn't before, and this would change everything. And I don't know if that's true. I think we maybe a little bit.
Yeah.
But we're still seemingly roughly along the same political fault lines that we've always been.
When's the last time that happened? Iran-Contra with Ali North?
I don't even know off the top of my head what the poll numbers were in the course of that. And all I know is after that was over, Reagan's numbers went back up. He ended on a high note.
This expectation that there's going to be this silver bullet, sudden change. There's like the Army McCarthy hearings. I mean, I don't know that there's a long precedent, and certainly in recent times of something happening that quickly because of someone's testimony. I will say,
maybe Nixon and Watergate, cancer on the presidency and all that stuff.
But was that? I guess the John Dean hearing was. But that's, again, we're talking 45 years ago or something. I do think what's pissed me off is all along there have been these naysayers who've been saying, like, this is pointless because they're not going to get 20 Republicans. And why are they doing this, right? And so what they miss is, like, action begets more action. And there's so many things that have come out that wouldn't have come out had Democrats not started this inquiry. And there's things that may come out. I mean, the latest sort of development here is that Republicans are getting mighty close to throwing Rudy Giuliani under the bus, right? Because Trump often said, talk to Rudy. And aside from the phone call, which is a big aside, it seems like the news was always delivered via Rudy, not by Trump, right? Mm-hmm. Like Sondland certainly was getting it from Rudy. Rudy claims that he has a, quote, insurance policy on Trump. Now, he was joking when he said that, but is it a joke? I don't know. I mean, there is a potential that Republicans could try to make Rudy out to be the fall guy here, and that Rudy could then flip on them. I'm not predicting it, but like that is not a crazy scenario, and it wouldn't have happened, obviously, had Democrats not started this process.
Well, even just to dial back the speculation, and you're right that the process has shaken the tree to some extent. There are a few more data points that we have now that we didn't have before, that they didn't even get in the closed door depositions. Closed door testimonies. So I agree that the process is useful in that regard. But by this, the flip side of that is what was a very simple story. Here's the transcript. Trump called the Ukrainian president, asked for investigations on Biden. In and of itself, regardless of aid or any other element to it, that is an inappropriate solicitation of foreign interference in our elections. End of story. Confirmed by the White House's own transcript. Now you have the added complexity of multiple narratives from individual players that have a lot of overlap, are not exactly the same in every single respect, and involve different people's interpretations and presumptions, etc., and a whole bunch of names of people. The average American, I don't know who Sondland is, I don't know who Vinland is, I never heard of these people before. Who are we talking about again? And you're listening to it maybe on the radio on the way to work. Who's talking right now? There's a lot more elements than there were before, that there now has to be some work done to piece that all together into a narrative that the average American understands, which they're not going to get by, I mean, unlike elites like you that can just lazily pass the time listening to the entire hearing from start to finish. Most of us regular Joe Sixpacks only get bits and pieces
out there. Yeah, I know the hardworking people vacationing at Cape Cod don't have time to sit in front of a TV 11 hours on a Wednesday.
So again, I don't think this is bad for Democrats overall, but I do think there's still work to do to take all this information from the process into something that is more digestible.
Yeah, and in fairness to Schiff, he at the end of every hearing has done a pretty good job of really contextualizing all of this, but I think you're right. It needs to be bullet points. Like, there was the call. Rudy went on TV and said this. Vindman, who is a Purple Heart recipient, testified to this. Ambassador Taylor, who was appointed by or nominated by Pompeo.
I don't even know if I would get. Honestly, I don't even know if I would do all that. I would start with the call. We have known for weeks that Trump made a highly inappropriate call that undermined the tenets of our democracy. And everything we have learned since has only further illuminated why that call happened and how dangerous it was to the fabric of our democracy. I mean, the more you get into names, I think the more complicated it gets. Trump is the person that matters here. And you can say, and the more you can give explanation over how we got to that point, fine. But if you start getting into like all sorts of threads I just think people start to overload.
Yeah, but I think that's always the case. Like I was talking to my wife, happy anniversary, baby.
Oh.
Today's 14 years. 14 years, Bill.
Exciting. What are you going to do?
She and I have been together almost as long as or a little bit longer than you and I.
Well,
so.
14 years married.
It's in both cases it's a romance.
How many years before marriage?
Oh no, we dated for like 7 years or something.
Okay.
It was a long courtship, but one of those years I was living in North Dakota, so we weren't seeing each other that much.
Okay.
But anyway, what was I going to say?
A November wedding.
Yeah.
No, you
know what's great about it?
You told us before, but why November?
Well, I mean, it just worked out that way. But I'll tell you, one of the good things about it is it always happens at Thanksgiving. So just traditionally, my wife and I will go, away for the Friday and Saturday after Thanksgiving. And nobody, I mean, in the old days, nobody would expect you to do any work on the Friday or Saturday after Thanksgiving. I'm guessing there's going to be like 10 impeachment hearings. But just wait for Christmas because that's when the Senate will take it up. So, yeah.
So I got you off track. Well, you brought in your wife for a different reason.
Oh, so I was having coffee with my wife the other morning, and she's like, I don't know if this may be hurting the Democrats. I just think it's boring and people aren't going to follow the whole thing. And I was like, isn't that always the case? Like, do you think the average person was following closely to any political hearing ever? I just think the idea that they're too in the weeds, it's too boring. That's any hearing, any testimony is going to be like that, right? I mean, that's just that's baked into the cake. And then the question is what narrative does get to regular people?
Do we have a little George and Kellyanne problem in the Lewis household here? I shouldn't. You can no comment that. I don't want to get you into trouble.
Well, it was more about analysis than it was about.
That's where it starts, Matt. Yeah. You start dancing around talking about analysis, and before you know it, you're on opposite sides of the bed.
Yeah. So anyway, I guess my main point just is testimony are always going to be boring and there's always going to be in the weeds, but that's what it is. And I just don't it doesn't strike me as a valid argument because do you think that if you were watching the Watergate hearings, gavel to gavel, I'm sure there were some riveting moments, but I'm guessing there was a lot of stuff that wasn't quite so riveting as well.
Right. No, I mean, I think one of the reasons why you don't see Democrats hammering the narrative all the time is that they're just doing the boring stuff of getting the facts down, and they're not bothering with countering every single piece of sand that Republicans are trying to throw into the air. They're just trying to get the stuff on the record, and then I assume at the end of this process it will be tied up in some way because the average person isn't watching every little second of it.
Yeah, no. So I don't buy the argument that this is too in the weeds. This is too. I mean, this is the process, and you have to go through that to get stuff like Sondland had to come back. I'm going to call him. It's spelled Sondland, but people say Sondland. Who knows? Maybe it's a Mueller type situation. But Sondland had to revise his testimony once or twice, and ended up giving very damning testimony against Trump, and that's part of the process. And by the way, who knows? A week ago or less than a week ago, Roger Stone was convicted on 7 counts. Does Sondland deliver the same testimony if Roger Stone isn't convicted a few days earlier?
Right.
There's all these variables that are really unpredictable that could be impacting things. We don't know where this is going to go, but you have to go through kind of the boring turning over of stones to get to some of the good stuff. We don't know what may come out. There could be a huge story out there that is going to develop.
Should we shift gears to the debate last night?
Yes. Now, you want to talk about a snoozer. That's where I think it's a better argument that Democrats are hurting themselves with the debates than that they are hurting themselves with
a snoozer I don't think is bad for Democrats writ large. I mean, at least they weren't tearing each other to shreds. Without arguing, that would be more problematic down the line. But I do.
Yeah, they avoided the. I think every other debate has started with a 45-minute discussion of Medicare for all. That.
Well, what surprised me about it is, I mean, you definitely can look back at other years where people thought, okay, now the knives are going to come out, and they don't.
Yeah. Because
the candidates calculate, I don't want to be the bad guy. I mean, I don't want to, take a swing and have it, bounce back on me. I remember thinking, I think it was the December 2003 debate. I think it was right after Gore endorsed Howard Dean. I was like, well, here it comes. And then I got there and no one did anything. I'm like, what are you guys just going to let Dean take it from you? But then all the oppo on Dean came out after that. They just didn't want to do it in the debate. They wanted to do it, under the radar.
But I think the difference is, and you're obviously talking about how Mayor Pete, who now is surging and leading, certainly in Iowa, and I saw a poll where he was leading in New Hampshire.
Though his lead in New Hampshire is not as clear. Iowa is clearer.
But nobody went after him, and he's very vulnerable on race, his record in Indiana. And nobody went after him. But I feel like Dean was like the prohibitive front runner at that point, whereas Buttigieg in a way is more dangerous because he is still surging. He is not. I think Dean got himself in a almost got too lucky too soon, right? Whereas I think Buttigieg is in a way in a better position than Dean was.
I don't agree with that. And so just to circle back a bit, I mean, the reason why I thought it was really coming for Pete this time, even though I knew past times Democrats hesitated, was because in the past debates, Democrats have not hesitated this cycle.
Right.
Kamala did not wait to go after Joe Biden. No one's really waited to go after Joe Biden.
I mean, Biden went after Tom Steyer last night.
Well, yeah, but obviously that's sort of a bit of a anomaly. But, when Warren had her rise, people went after her very hard in the last debate. So my sense has been like people have had the mindset of we're not going to let anybody, break out of the pack. We're going to take them down as soon as we can to avoid having this thing get away from us. So I don't know exactly why they treated Pete differently the other times. And the other thing that I was expecting, there's a piece that I'm working on for Politico that's not up yet. I won't talk about the whole thing yet. But in the research of it, I refreshed whatever shred of memory I had about this fact, if I had it at all. Do you remember Senator Paul Simon?
Yes.
So for those who don't know,
energy policy.
What's that?
His big issue was energy policy, I think.
No, I don't think that's right.
And I remember the other thing I remember about him. Well, he obviously wore bow ties and thick nerd glasses.
Right.
And he went on. There was a Saturday Night Live episode where he showed up, and so did the musician Paul Simon.
Oh, the musician, right.
And they had this funny thing about like one of us is supposed to host. I thought it was me. So,
and Al Franken did a great Paul Simon impression, a couple of sketches. But so in the run up to Iowa, he was running as an FDR Truman liberal. This is at a time where Democrats were talking about trying to modify liberalism and adapt to the Reagan era. And Simon was saying, I'm old school, FDR, New Deal, plus I'm old-fashioned Midwestern integrity. I rooted out corruption in my small town. And so he had he had a moment in November of 1987 when he was in first place in the Des Moines Register poll with 24%, And that poll came out on November 16th, the same exact day in 2019 that Buttigieg got 25% in the Des Moines Register poll. And after Simon had that moment, there were a spate of articles. Is Paul Simon electable? Is he too far to the left? Is his persona not the right thing for America? And then in the next debate after that, there was a pile-on. It was, 80s style pile-on, not, 21st century meme viral moment style pile-on. But the killer moment was when Dick Gebhardt turned to Paul Simon and said, Simonomics is Reaganomics with a bow tie. and Simon didn't have a rejoinder for that. Soon after, Jesse Jackson, one of the things that Paul Simon had, even though he was an FDR liberal, he was pushing a balanced budget amendment. That was sort of his old-fashioned common sense values. Make your numbers add up. And Jesse Jackson said the balanced budget amendment is ham and egg justice. When making the ham and egg sandwich, both the chicken and the hog contributed, but the chicken just had to drop an egg and move on, and the hog had to drop a leg. So it seems fair. It seems the cuts are across the board, but the poor get it harder, than the rich. So Simon was getting hit, left and right, and he still had a solid second place in Iowa. Dukakis was a weak third. Gebhardt won Iowa. But neither Gebhardt or Simon were positioned to win New Hampshire. So Dukakis
Gabbard basically lived in Iowa for like a year, right?
And he was a Midwestern guy, and so he was able to trade on that. But Dukakis had a lot more money, and when it moved to Super Tuesday, there was a big Super Tuesday with a lot of southern states, which were designed to engineer a moderate candidate. But Jesse Jackson screwed that up because Jesse Jackson won the African-American Deep South states, and Al Gore, the Southern moderate, won the Upper South border states. So they split the Southern vote. Gebhardt is getting hammered by Dukakis as a flip-flopper. Simon totally fizzles out. Gets back to the original point here. I mean, he had nowhere to go after Iowa, and having not won it, had no other place to land. And Dukakis had enough money to pick off Texas and Florida with the help of suburban votes, and he got to say, I'm the one guy here who's not a regional candidate, and won the whole thing overall. So Buttigieg has clear weaknesses. Race being sort of the most dramatic one, but there's also the experience one. He's a 38-year-old mayor of a fairly small city, and it just seemed like this would be and with a bunch of stories coming out in the run-up to the debate. I mean, you were seeing the oppo coming out. You were seeing the viral videos on Twitter when he praised the Tea Party come out. You saw The Intercept hammer him on inflating his endorsements for his Douglas plan amongst African-American South Carolinians. You saw him getting caught for using a stock photo of Kenyans on the website promoting the Douglas plan, which Kamala Harris directly attacked on Monday. So it all seemed to be building up to this moment. I don't know if you saw Waleed Shahid, who was with Justice Democrats, had a tweet after Kamala was handed the moment to go after Buttigieg. And Ryan Grimm was the reporter at The Intercept who dug up a number of these things. Shahid had a tweet saying, live look at Ryan Grimm with the LeBron James video with the arms outstretched. What are you doing? To his teammate. It's surprising that Kamala didn't take that swing when she teed it up herself. So I don't have a great explanation for that, except people thinking we can wait. We can see if he's for real, and we have time at a December debate or even a January debate to take our swing if we have to. It seems like a bit of a risk to me, quite frankly. I mean, he risks fortifying his support between now and then, but hey, they've done what they've done.
I mean, on one hand, you can understand, you're right, people have attacked, but oftentimes they've been penalized for attacking this cycle, and the attacks haven't always worked. I mean, Biden has been attacked, for example, and it hasn't taken. Well, it's hard to say if it's taken much of a toll.
It certainly is. I mean, I think it's held him. It hasn't made him collapse,
right?
And I do think it's less the attacks and more the performance for Biden. And again, Biden last night still can't have a sharp debate. He's still a little stammery.
He can't string two sentences together, Bill. He
well,
cannot.
He can string two or three. It's after that when it gets more complicated.
Okay, fair point. Here's the problem. Donald Trump is so vulnerable and so bad, and yet when you look at that stage, every one of them has major problems. I mean,
every one of them has weaknesses. I don't know if everyone has like a disaster of a problem.
None of them. There's nobody that I'm like, wow, that guy's Barack Obama. That guy's.
I don't think there is. I don't think there is a Barack Obama in this field.
The most talented political athlete is clearly Buttigieg, but as you've laid out, he's got problems.
Right, they all have problems, and I think in the case of Biden, I mean, he is. I don't think anything happened in the debate. I mean, the worst thing obviously was the Kamala moment when he said I was endorsed by the only female African American senator, and he meant to say first, and he self-corrected in real time, which I think sort of limits the damage there. But obviously that guy talked about a lot. But it's still just nothing. I mean, his main strength is I'm the most experienced person in the field, which he is. When he doesn't sound like it, it limits the potency of that argument. So
here's the problem, Bill. Trump will destroy him in these debates. I mean, Democrats have to really be worried about that. I think the only person who actually could go toe to toe with Trump in terms of matching wits is Buttigieg.
I don't. I mean, maybe. I mean, I don't want to be too harsh on Buttigieg. I don't think we can fully assess how Buttigieg would handle Trump's bullying tactics because he hasn't been tested in that way.
Right. That's fair.
And there would be, there'd be an age differential. Look, Obama was younger than McCain, and Obama was able to, go toe-to-toe with McCain and look like I belong on this stage with you.
Right.
But there's a risk that you're going to look like a kid next to an adult.
True.
And maybe
Trump. And Trump will pull out all the stops and bully and you name it. Buttigieg seems like he has his act together. He also has the military background, which I think helps him out. I feel like Buttigieg would be the best debater. Biden is the best candidate, except I'm a little worried he's going to get destroyed in the debate against Trump.
Well, he could. I can't obviously make predictions here, but and I said this in the past shows. I think Biden is better in almost every other format, but this kind of crowded debate setting. And now it may be because he was good in the one-on-one debates with Palin and Ryan, he'll be fine against Trump, or it may mean he's actually lost a step since those debates, and he's not prepared to be against Trump. But I do feel like when he is doing an interview on TV, he's pretty good.
Yeah. There is something to be said for this. You would think that the less you speak, the better, if you're not up to par. I can just tell you, I mean, having done some of those TV panel discussions where there's like 9 people, it's tough to know like kind of when to jump in. And you might have something great to say about this, but there's 5 people before you and now the topic has changed. So in a way, I think it might be easier if you're just facing one other person and you get to speak every other time. It is possible that Biden would perform better, believe it, surprisingly, but I think it is possible in a one-on-one debate.
Now, to get back to some of the other candidates here, Klobuchar had a very strong debate, and I think what a lot of people don't realize is, you might think of Klobuchar and Booker and Castro as being sort of similar bottom-tier candidates. But Castro is already unable to qualify for the debates, and I doubt he's going to qualify for the next one, having not been in this one. Booker is in serious jeopardy of not qualifying for the December debate. He needs you need 4 polls of 4% or greater, or 2 early state polls of 6%. And these are polls that the DNC says these are the polls we sanction. Right now, Booker has 0. He has 0 of those polls. He needs 4 of those polls or 2 of the Oregon State polls by December 12th. So less than a month from now. And as I thought he had a pretty good debate, was it such a good debate that he's going to all of a sudden, jump up 2-3 points in the polls when other people had good debates too? He's not the star of the debate. So I highly doubt it. Klobuchar has already qualified for the December debate. She is doing well enough that she didn't need a good performance in this debate to make it to the next round. She has been very quietly, very slowly, very steadily holding her own. I think she's helped greatly with good poll showings in Iowa, but she also has some okay ones in New Hampshire, and she has the donors. I'm not saying she is on a glide path here, but if anybody can pull off the slow and steady, it's going to be her, because she has a toehold in Iowa. She's best of the rest in Iowa. So your top 4 are Buttigieg, Warren, Biden, Sanders. They're all in double digits. Of the single digits, Klobuchar's at the top of that list in the poll average. So if Buttigieg can't hold on to the front runner slot, and if Biden can't recoup the moderates he's lost to Buttigieg, who is best positioned to pick them up? It's Klobuchar. So don't sleep on Klobuchar. And going to the other candidate, Kamala, who is in very bad shape poll wise right now, although she will make it to the next. She will be in the next debate. I thought I had a piece in Politico giving advice to the candidates, and my advice to Kamala was to stop with the canned lines and seeming overly calculated and having all the set attack pieces. And maybe one reason why she didn't go after Buttigieg was that it felt like it was going to be another planned thing that was going to look phony, and she didn't want to do it. I think she did not look phony in this debate. I think she came across much more natural, even though, she might have, paused and searched for a word here and there in kind of a Biden-esque sort of way. It didn't come across as meandering or flustered. It seemed more real, and I felt she was performing more at her peak.
I still think it's amazing that we're at this point, and this is as good as it gets. There's no star power out there. There's nobody who is inspiring or that like Oprah should have run, Michelle Obama, like somebody. Buttigieg is by far the most compelling, and as you've noted, he's got a lot of issues to overcome. I'm just stunned that Democrats, that this is as good as it gets, that this is the best they have to choose from against Trump. Well, this is all they can muster? Joe Biden?
I want to respond to that, but I want to talk about Buttigieg a little bit more, though, because I do he got off a lot better than he could have. It could have been a whole lot worse for Buttigieg. If Kamala gave him a smackdown that he's out of his league on race issues, that would have been very bad for him. I don't think he has solved that problem with the debate. He had a nice little speech about being sympathetic but empathetic. I know what it's like to not feel fully welcomed by your country, but I understand I haven't lived the same experience as you. I thought he threaded that needle fairly well.
He did, but he could have been so vulnerable to like Kamala turning to be like, with all due respect, you have no idea. I was bust, whatever it is.
I don't think it was enough to say, he's now going to jump up 10 points with black South Carolinians now because of that one little speech. I don't think that's the case. I think that vulnerability is still out there. He was 0% in the last Quinnipiac poll with black South Carolinians, so I don't think he has solved that problem. And I think it's at least an assumption that we don't know is true, that if you win Iowa and New Hampshire on the basis of white college-educated votes, that's going to solve your South Carolina African-American problem. So I think he's still got big issues there, that he wasn't tested on them in the debate, but he's still got a lot of work to do. And it's not fairly evident how he does it, because he has a fundamental problem that he didn't build these relationships ahead of time, and there's an inherent skepticism of the white savior showing up out of nowhere claiming he's going to solve all your problems.
Yeah. It's, again, I'm going to sound like a broken record, but maybe it's Joe Biden and he rises to the occasion and does, holds his own in the debates. I mean, Joe, again, if you go back and watch his debate against Paul Ryan, his debate with Sarah Palin, he in the past has been very good. So have to hope that Joe Biden shows up.
Well, and to your other point, is this as good as it gets? I mean, you look at this field compared to, 88. 88, they called them the Seven Dwarves. And in 92, everyone was grinding their teeth that, we didn't get Cuomo, we didn't get Gore, we didn't get Bill Bradley. All the big guys stepped aside. Now we're stuck with this small state governor and nerdy guy from Massachusetts, Paul Tsongas, and whatnot. I don't think the quality of this current field is, D's and F's. They may not be A+ Barack Obamas, but there is raw talent with not just Buttigieg, but with Harris and with Booker, and with Klobuchar, and Biden, forever his imperfections, is still, by and large, in every poll that we see, a pretty popular figure nationwide, and polls very well versus Trump, and even in the swing states. So it's not like they're in the desert here, but not every field's going to produce a Barack Obama.
That's for sure. It just feels like a missed opportunity. Trump won by being this personality, by being provocative, by not sounding like a politician. And obviously there's a lot of bad things about that. There's a lot of things that Trump has introduced that I think are bad trends. But I am surprised that Democrats haven't kind of seized a little bit of what worked for Trump. That debate, their debate, it could have been 10 years ago or 20 years ago last night. I mean, the issues are a little more left wing. They've moved to the Democratic Party, by and large, has moved to the left. But stylistically, these are politicians. And it's interesting to me that the Democrats didn't adapt to the Trumpian reality a little more.
Well, yeah, there's a question of how Dems should react to that fact. Sanders and Warren represent the school of thought that Trump's economic populism is what got him to where he is, and Democrats should copy that element of it. And you're not seeing either Warren or Sanders back off from that last night. So one of my pieces of advice to Sanders in my Political piece yesterday was that it was time for him to show off his bipartisanship, his record of bipartisanship. He did work with John McCain on VA reform. He did work with Mike Lee on the Yemen War Powers Resolution earlier this year. He did get a lot of amendments passed when he was a House member and then it was a Republican majority. He even worked with business developers when he was mayor of Burlington. I mean, he's got things he can say to say, yeah, I'm a revolutionary, yeah, I'm a democratic socialist, but I also know how to get things done when I get into office. And he even has a video that came out before the debate that highlighted a good deal of that stuff. And some people responded to me, hey, Bill, it looks like Bernie's taking your advice. But in the debate, he never does it. I mean, he did it in the previous debate when he was asked, tell us about a surprising friendship of yours. Yeah. That was the tail end of the debate. He's never made central to his argument to say, I know how to get things done in Washington. I might do it in a slightly different way than a typical politician because I'm going to build this mass movement, but I also know how the inside game works, and I've made it work before. He doesn't do that as a primary argument, and some people have said to me, well, why would he? His base doesn't want to hear that. His base isn't big enough. He's always had the young vote since he ran 2016. He needs older votes who are not revolutionaries, and he doesn't. But he doesn't do it, in part because he's being true to his democratic socialist nature, and also I think because there's an argument. Well, that kind of establishment approach to things is not what people want in the Trump era. So don't talk about how to do the inside game. And Warren,
when I watch these candidates, I almost feel like, you're talking about the inside game. I mean, it's a game. I mean, if I'm like a scout, you know, like if this is a sports team or something, someone last night tweeted that Kamala Harris has warning track power, which I think is true. She hits a lot of long fly balls, but they're not home runs, and they end up being outs. And you go through it, it's like you've got, you know, the aging veteran, you know, the Crash Davis is Joe Biden. Like, does he have one more season in him? He just wants to come out to the ballpark one more year, right? And then you've got Pete Buttigieg, who's like the Nuke LaLoosh, like the young up and coming guy, but he's too green. He's not quite right. Maybe he's just not quite ready for prime time. He's got this.
He's not wild. He's not wild like LaLoosh.
Fair point. Okay, this analogy is not perfect, but stick with me.
Maybe he's the evangelical shortstop.
Okay, that could be. You've seen the movie a few times, I can tell. But none of these players are going to be playing in Yankee Stadium. I mean, you're like, this person's good, but they're like double A good. Maybe they're triple A good, but are they Yankee Stadium good? None of them really. Like, they're just all like, you know, Cory Booker can go 3 for 4 one day, and then he strikes out 4 times the next day, and they just don't quite have it. They have flashes of brilliance occasionally, but they just can't close the deal. That's how it feels to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think Booker is sort of similar to Kamala in that way. I mean, he has a lot of, you know, long fly balls too, and you know, I think. You know, I mean, they all made the mistake early on of running to the Bernie left when it wasn't true to their nature, and that stalled their movement out of the gate, and they had to play kind of catch up ever since. I think that hurt everybody, and I think they're hurt by the fact that Bernie, Warren, Biden all have built-in base of support based on long track records. So you got to be really extra special to break into that. And Buttigieg is the only one that has. Even that's in a very limited way with moderate, upper income, college educated white people in Iowa and really nowhere else. Maybe to some extent New Hampshire now. And the case of Booker, I mean, I think Booker really has like a true sense of self that he hasn't been consistent in showing. Like, his thing always was, love is the antidote to Trumpism. We shouldn't be, I mean, just your point, Democrats aren't acting like Trump. Cory Booker had a theory that they should not copy Trump. Trump is a symbol of hatred, and you don't respond to hatred with more hatred, you respond to it with love. And there was a sense early on that was sort of naive. It's not what the fired up Democratic base wanted.
I like that brand if he stuck with it. But Cory gets pissed off and mean and mad and yells at people, and he steps. See, that's fundamentally part of the problem that these Democrats have. They don't really stick to a brand. If Cory Booker was the candidate of love, that's an argument. I'm not saying it's enough to win, but I could rally around that. But
and the argument I made in my advice piece was, I mean, this is Booker's last shot.
Yeah.
You know, if anyone had pressure on him to perform, it was Booker. And he did pretty well. I'm not saying he had a horrible debate, but his big breakout moment towards the end was like attacking Biden on marijuana. And I was like, this is your moment to show you're the candidate of love, and that distinguishes you from everybody else on this stage.
Yeah. I'm going to recommend, I've probably recommended it years ago, but Carville and Begala wrote a book called Suck Up, Buck Up, and Come Back When You Foul Up.
Right.
And it's all these political maxims. And one of them, they talk about Southwest Airlines decided to be the low-fare airline. Mm-hmm. That was going to be their brand. Mm-hmm. And so if someone comes to the owner and says, hey, we would like to include a salad on the flight between Santa Fe and Scottsdale, the owner says, is that going to make us the low-fare airline? You know? Mm-hmm. And if someone says, hey, wouldn't it be great if we had, free bag? You could bring an extra bag. And the owner's like, that's great. Is that going to make us the low-fare airline? That answers all the questions. That's having a strong brand. And I don't think they get it. And Cory Booker, he has a side of him that is really compelling, that could be inspirational, aspirational, motivational, likable. And yet he steps on that brand all the time by getting pissed off and attacking people and saying mean things and just looking mean. I don't get it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, people would argue. Some will argue, well, Biden is in the wrong position on this issue. He's in the minority of the party on this issue. Booker took a clean shot where the party's at and mocked him in a way that most Democrats want Biden to be mocked, and therefore, maybe highlighting that issue might boost his numbers in some degree. I mean, and we'll see what happens. I thought it was counter to what he should have done to illuminate what makes him special. And he could have basically called out the whole process. These debates force us to turn on each other when we need to come together in the name of love to stop the hatred that Trump is spewing.
In the name of love.
And I can't argue that one debate performance would have solved all those problems, but I just thought if he's going to go out, he should go out on a note that crystallizes what makes him special, so he will be as viable, going forward.
And I mean, the thing that you say is his brand, or should be his brand, I don't associate with him. So that's like fundamentally an obvious problem.
And the other thing I didn't do, he has a signature policy proposal, baby bonds, that everybody. It's a lower cost version of Yang's universal basic income, because it's not literally $1,000 to everybody, every adult forever, but it is when everybody who is born gets money from the government every month that sits in a trust fund over their first 18 years, and it's on a sliding scale. So if you're poor, you get more. And then that money can be used for certain purposes once you turn 18, and it's a whole lot cheaper. I mean, Yang's proposal totally breaks the bank. Booker's is a lot less money overall, but arguably has more potency in terms of leveling the playing field for every kid. Once they become adults. He almost never talks about it in the debates. I think it's come up a couple times.
People don't realize the importance of repetition and owning your brand. I mean, this hit me. I mean, I've talked about this before, but 20 years ago, I was working for a young candidate running for state senate named Alex Mooney. He's now a congressman from West Virginia. He was running for state senate in Maryland. He became the youngest Republican ever elected to the Maryland State Senate. And then I helped my wife ran his reelection 4 years later, and I helped him. And I forget which one of those elections it was, but one of those two elections, he had raised like almost $1 million, which was a lot of money back then for a state senate race, run countless TV ads, radio commercials, knocked on tens of thousands of doors. I mean, it was unbelievable. He would spend like 8 hours a day for a year knocking on doors, talking to registered likely voters. I mean, an entire campaign all day long, every day. And at the end of the race, and Alex Mooney was like a diehard right winger, right? And at the end of the race, he's talking to someone, and the person's like, now, are you the one that's pro-life or the one that's pro-choice? And he's like, I have spent the last year, I've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars and countless doors. I don't even know the math, like how many doors that you could even hit in a year if you did it, consistently. But and after all of that, every single day, front page of the Frederick News Post, radio ads on WMAL or whatever stations. People are like, now, which one are you? Are you the pro-life candidate? I'm not sure. And you have to own a brand, repeat it over and over, and have people be like, oh, I know him. He's the Southern governor guy.
Right.
Oh, she's the, Mama Grizzly woman. People need to be able to do that. I don't think anybody. And if you step on that or muddy it, it's devastating. And that's kind of where these Democrats are.
So you've basically been torn in this whole process between Yang and Gabbard. So they're still around. They had their moments last night. Who did the better one? Who did the better job?
Oh yeah, Yang did well. Yang had a good night. He had a couple of pretty good laugh lines, as I recall. Booker probably had the best laugh line, but Yang had a solid night. Tulsi, I think Tulsi is one of those people that like also doesn't see. This actually is perfect. Yang has a brand. He is likable. He is about the UBI. Like, maybe the math doesn't work. Doesn't matter. Like him, funny, good guy. I feel like Tulsi, like, 1 minute I'm sort of, oh, she's the Tucker Carlson person, or, oh, now she's the anti-war person. Like, I don't really know what she is. I feel like she's confusing to me. I've watched every debate and I really don't quite know what she stands.
I feel like she's being consistent, even to a fault, that she's anti-establishment, anti-Democratic Party establishment, anti-military industrial complex establishment, anti-imperialism. She loves.
But what's she for?
What she's actually for might be a little tough for me to articulate.
I don't know what she's for.
But she loves tearing at Buttigieg about use of the military. You want to go into you want to go into the Middle East. You want to go into Mexico.
And I don't Judge won that exchange last night.
Well, that's been his bet. That's an easy matchup for him. I'm not a crackpot Assad lover like you, so don't lecture me about foreign policy. But still, it's still true to her brand. I mean, that's what her fans want her to do.
Here's the weird thing, Bill. I felt this way about Palin too. There was a time when I felt like, look, I could never have made it to where Palin made it to. So, but having said that, like conceding that I could not have done what Palin did, there was a point where I feel like if I could have had an intervention and from now on, Palin, you're going to do and say everything that I tell you to do and say, I could have made her president. Maybe right, maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong. But I feel like there was a point. And I feel like Tulsi's obviously like successful, smart. She's more famous than me. She's, I mean, who am I to tell her? But I still feel like if I could have 6 months ago said, okay, Tulsi, only say and do what I tell you to say and do, I think she could have actually had a real run.
Yeah,
I mean, she had a lot of the
You're
tools.
suggesting, Tulsi, if you could not be the crazy person that you are, instead be a sane person that you're not, I could have made you president. But that's not the person. That's the person that she is. I suggested in my advice to her in the debate was, lean into the crazy, do what your Hillary hating conspiracy theorists.
Throw at the mascot, right?
What's that?
This is Nuclear Lush when he throws it hits the mascot on purpose.
Whatever the first question was, I said, ignore the question, just say, Jeffrey Epstein didn't kill himself, drop the mic, walk off the stage, legend.
That would have been great.
Legend forever.
That would have been great.
Her fundraiser had gone through the roof.
She would have probably gone up 10 points in the polls.
Exactly.
God knows she would have won the Drudge poll.
So missed opportunity for her. And Yang, my advice to Yang was, Yang is trying to get serious. Yang hired Tad Devine's consulting firm. He was with Bernie before, but he's not a Democratic socialist. He's a longtime Democratic political consultant. He's got new ads from that team, which are very slick and don't dwell on UBI all that much, trying to pitch him as more of a broader, standard issue Democratic progressive candidate, though they do say he's not a politician, but he's still checking off sort of standard, he's going to Medicare for all, he's going to cover mental health, and he's going to take on Amazon and big tech and Wall Street, and all this sort of basic stuff. And so I was like, this is time for you to show you're serious. Wear a damn tie.
Yeah.
Send the message that this is not a lark anymore, that you're serious. And
it would have been talked about. It would have, the fact that he hadn't been wearing a tie now gives him, it's like in Spinal Tap, you're already at 11, where do you go? But he could have made news simply by putting on a necktie.
Yeah.
And it would have sent a signal, like maybe this guy is taking it up. And I agree with you wholeheartedly, and he should do it next time.
I don't think he took it up a notch last night. He had a couple nice lines. He's a lovable presence on the trail.
It's hard for him because he doesn't get enough bites at the apple. I think Elizabeth Warren spoke not exaggerating, 4 or 5 times before Andrew Yang got to speak once last night.
Well, they were very top heavy on her in the first half, and then not as much in the second half, which I thought was a little weird. But nevertheless,
hey, listen. Nevertheless, she persisted, and I hate to do this, but I should probably get back to the ball and chain, which is the TV. I mean, Rudy has probably been escorted out in handcuffs, and I don't even know it.
No, we talked a good long while. So, anything else you have to plug?
Read me at the Daily Beast, watch me at CNN, rate and review Matt Lewis and the news on iTunes, and I still have some Human Scum t-shirts at patreon.com/Matt Lewis. And by the way, now they're available for everyone. There was a time when it was just never Trumpers who were called Human Scum. I think Trump today has opened it up to Democrats as well. So check that out. Get your Human Scum t-shirt, Matt Lewis, on Patreon.
All right. I got nothing else to plug, so I will just see you. Well, it's Thanksgiving next week, right?
Some of us work on Thanksgiving, Bill.
I guess we should talk whether we want to pull off an early pre-Thanksgiving episode or not. So
we should do a very special DMZ early in the week.
Yeah, and I might not be able to do the week after that, so we should try to work with it next week, I think.
Okay, Wally Pip.
You can't replace me. All right, till then, Matt.